I don't know what it is about podcasting or making a podcast, because I actually get like, oh, like I'm excited to make the podcast. And then on the other hand, I'm excited to make the podcast, and then I'm like wanting to save it because I want to like relish in it. And at the same time, for some reason I get like a little nervous because you can edit technically a podcast, but I just think it's just raw and real and you're not editing it like you do YouTube. So I was thinking this week, what should I talk to y'all about? And I came, and I just finally decided that I wanted to tell you the story about when I got lost in Morocco, Africa. When I went there, I was living in Spain at the time, and I had decided to take like was it 2 weeks? No, it was like a four, it wasn't 2 weeks. I was in Ethiopia for 3 weeks. I was in Ethiopia for almost a month, but I was in Morocco for like 4 days, 3 or 4 days, and excuse me, hope that wasn't too weird. But again, I'm not editing this, so it's gonna be completely raw. But yeah, so I'll just get right into it. I am really excited about sharing this. I've never actually shared this like publicly, and I do want to incorporate like different stories or different things that have happened in my life, because weird stuff always seems to happen to me, and I'm not mad about it. I mean, it's awesome. I think it's kind of cool. It's just kind of a weird, quirky thing that goofy stuff just always seems to happen in my life. And so this was a weird thing. I got lost in Morocco, and I thought I was going into sex slavery as well. So let's jump right into the story. So it was kind of like with a big group of people. Like when you study abroad, they're always trying to cater to you. Oh, that's another thing. Like, I want to share with you different stories about when I studied abroad, because honestly, I felt when I was there that, I wish I would have had like my YouTube channel then, because it would have been so like crazy to have all the different diaries, like like a daily diary from studying abroad. That would have been so cool. But I don't have it. I always thought when I was there, I'm going to finish my sentence. So I always thought when I was there that there should be a reality TV show for us and for all the things that we did and the things that we like that took place, because so many things happened, and I was like, this feels like this should be on TV. And yet again, like, it would happen like every day, like the weirdest stuff. But anyways, so I want to talk a lot about different things that happened when I studied abroad. I don't know if I'll talk a lot, but I would definitely want to share that in future podcasts. So stay tuned for that. But let's get back to today's. So I went with this big group. Like, when you study abroad, they cater to you, like people from that country, and they want to like do different tourist type like events and trips and tours and different things. So there was this company called Tour Granada or Tour Sevilla. They had two different names, but they were all kind of like, they had different names, but they were the same company. It was kind of weird. And they would, the one tour that I went on a couple different tours, but one of them I went on was to Morocco with all these different people from all over the world that were all studying abroad in Spain. So yeah, so we went on the trip, and we took this 1 day trip where we went to Chef Shawan. And oh my gosh, I'm yawning again. Excuse me. So, yeah, so we went there, we got there, and we got tours throughout the city. And so it was all day. We went to different shops and different things. So it was towards the end of the night, and the sun was setting, and by this time it was getting dark. Like, it wasn't like pitch black dark, but it was getting dark, I'd say. Well, it was just around the border where it's turning from dusk to getting pitch black dark, like in between there. And it was just before 8 o'clock, I'd say. And so I was bartering with a guy. This is kind of all where it starts. So I was like talking to a guy, and I wanted to get some different souvenirs. They were like these little, like in Chef Shawan, it was a keychain, right? Like typical keychain, what everybody gets for their family. And it was like the little shoes. They were like Peter Pan shoes, kind of. Like, that's the shoes that they kind of wear, but they don't have like the big curl at the top. It wasn't that dramatic, but it was kind of like a mix of Peter Pan shoes and Tom's. Like, if you know Tom's shoes and then Peter Pan's, it's kind of a mixture of those two, but they curl up a little bit, but not as dramatic as Peter Pan's shoes. Anyways, so I was getting those, and excuse me, I was talking to the guy, and he wanted to sell it to me for a price, and I was like, I didn't want to pay that. And so we were going back and forth, and finally I was like, I wasn't sure, but then I noticed that my group was kind of getting farther away from me. Like, they were, like, I don't know, they were farther away, like, I don't know how to explain it, like, maybe 100 feet away from me, and it was, like, a big group of 50 people, and, the bus, like, the group leader said that, like, matched us up, we had partners. Well, the two girls from my, like, part, like, where I was studying abroad, like, different people came from all over Spain that were studying abroad from all over in the southern part of Spain. So the only girls that were from my university there was two of them, but so we were a group of three, but they weren't, like, it was kind of like a weird, awkward group. Like, they were kind of buddies, and I was kind of just in their, like, group, but I didn't ever really hang out with them too much. So they weren't, like, paying that much attention to me, and I wasn't paying that much attention to them. So we kind of weren't the best buddy system. So anyways, I was noticing that my group was going, farther and farther away from me, and I was like, I can't lose the group. And so, side note, okay, so when you're in Chef Shawan or in these small towns, like, not Rabat, Morocco, like the capital, but like smaller northern towns of Morocco, they weren't ever like, there isn't like a map. Like, how we have like maps of like streets and straight lines? Well, they don't do that. Like, it will, like, they randomly built houses, and then they'd just build another random house right next to it, and then another house, or like, and it'd be curly, or like, it would be like a maze. It's essentially a maze. And so, and where we were there, it's not like a road where you drive cars. Like, you don't drive cars in between the buildings. It's like a dirt, like, sidewalk. Like, it's not big enough for a car to fit where we were. It was like sidewalks, but they were dirt floors in between the buildings. And sometimes you can go right, but you can't go left. Or sometimes, like, there'll just be a random building, like a T, but there's no order whatsoever to the way that the buildings are organized or anything in this town, in this village. So it's not like you can go like two houses to the forward and then, and all the buildings are connected, so it's in like a solid line, like literally like a maze. Like, I'm not kidding. It's a maze. But if you don't know where you're going, like, you're gonna get lost. Like, it's a maze. But if you know where you're going, then no problem. I mean, obviously. So anyway, I'm watching them get further and further away, and then I was like, telling the guy, I was like, okay, I just gotta go, like, forget it, like, I'm not gonna buy it, like, but you know how you, like, play the game sometimes with people, like, when you buy a car, or, like, when you barter, whatever, like, I wasn't playing a game, like, I really needed to go at that moment, but he was like, and sometimes you would do that in Spain, where you're like, oh, I'm not going to pay that. And then you just pretend to, like, want to walk away. And then they will, like, call you back and want to sell it to you or whatever. But I was, like, not playing the game. Like, I was like, I need to catch up to the group. Like, I needed to run to catch up to them, or I was going to lose them, like, for real. And so I just said, like, I got to go, like, I'm not going to buy anything. So I started to like put the keychains down, and he was like, oh, okay. And he was like, and he let me buy them for what I wanted. And I was like, he said he would let me buy them for what I wanted. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I looked at my group, and they were starting to turn the corner to the right. Like, there was like 50 of them, and they were starting to turn, and they were far away. Like, I would have had to run to catch up to them at this moment, but they were turning. And so I, bought the stuff, like the keychains from the guy. And when I looked back, the entire group was gone. And I was like, so I thanked the guy really fast, and I started running, which that looks kind of weird. I mean, running through these streets, because nobody runs. People just walk. It's Africa time, like, you go slow, like, people are slow. So now at this point, it is pretty dark. Like, it is pitch black at this point, but it's not like they have street lanterns. No, they have like no, they don't have like street lights is what I meant to say, but they have like lanterns, like a lantern hanging in their door, lighting up the street, because that's it. Just one little lantern. Just on the outside. Just on the outside of their building. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is weird. And so I was like, well, I was just nervous, like scared, because I was like, oh my gosh. So you couldn't go. So this is where you can't go to the left, but it's just like a wall. Like, they hadn't, I don't know if there was no building, but you couldn't like turn left and keep going down the road. So then I was like, but I knew they all turned right. But there were a couple different openings that I saw that they could have gone down, but I wasn't sure which right that they took. And granted, all the buildings are connected. So there's not like separate buildings like in the US. There's like, it's like, and they're not that high. But they're all white. All the walls are white to keep like mosquitoes out. Because the paint that they put on, they're like rock walls. Like, it's like all rock buildings and rock, like, it's like a rock. Like, it's like caveman, like Flintstones, like for real Flintstones. And they like cut holes in the walls of the rock for the door and the windows and stuff. Like, no kidding. And so I went to go turn right where I thought they all turned. But when I turned right and looked, there was nobody. And you couldn't hear the big group of 50. I mean, it's 50 people. How in the world do you lose 50 people, right? This is what I'm starting to think. I was like, what? I know that they turned here. So then I was about to turn around and go to the next right that I thought. So it's not like it's not like in the US, like the road will just connect. Like, even if I went straight down that road, it would connect with the road next to it, right? to the left. Well, no, it doesn't necessarily. You have to go, it's like a maze, remember? So it may or may not connect to the one next to it. So you have to go back to where it did, you knew it connected, and you had to, and then I was about to turn and go, and then all of a sudden there was a random guy there out of nowhere, and he was wearing all jeans, like jean jacket and jean pants, and he stopped me and he said, so did you lose your group? And I think he was speaking to me in Spanish, because people speak a lot of different languages there, and he asked me that, and I was like, he's like, did you lose your group? I can take you. And I didn't answer. And he was like, I can take you to that group that you were with. And he's like, I'm a police officer. I can take you to them. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, right, you're a police officer. He was just wearing jeans, like a jean jacket and jean pants. I'm sorry. And I was like, and I was thinking at first, like, what option do I have? But I was like, no, at first, then I was like, well, no, I can find them. Like, they're probably around the other side. So I was like, no, thank you. And so I went around back where I was before, and I went down the other way to the right, and they were not there either. So I was like, oh my gosh, now I have no idea where they are, and I couldn't hear them at all. They were gone. They were legit, like, disappeared. So then another guy followed me around the corner, and he was wearing, like, all these, like, scarves that were draped all around his arms, and in his jacket, like a guy like you see in the movies when they open up their jacket and they want to sell you, like, watches or something, like, it was like that. But he had scarves, and they were draped all around him, and he's like, I can take you to your group, and he's like, I can take you. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And then the other guy followed him as well, and with the jean jacket, he's like, I can really take you to your group, like, I'm a police officer. And at this point, I'm thinking, like, what option do I have? Like, I'm just gonna wander around and try to find them, like, and now it's pitch black out, like, and I remember there's only, like, random lanterns in random doors. Not every door is lit, and that's only the door, so it's dark in between doors, and granted, the like, sidewalk, they're not sidewalks, it's just, like, road in between the buildings, but it's like a maze, so you're in the dark. Like, it's not, like, light, it's kind of dark. And so I was like, I have no option, so I guess I'll just go with him, I guess. And I didn't know what to do, wander around by myself, or, he said he knows. I mean, I don't know. And so I just was like, I just felt like I was supposed to go with him. And I was like, oh, it feels like a bad idea, but what option did I have? It'd be worse to wander around, I thought, and so he goes back around where I originally turned, and he starts walking down that road, and he's like, come with me. And the guy that had all the stuff draped around him, he was following us. And so we were walking, and all of a sudden, as we were walking, the people started running out of their stores, and, like, there's always, like, a bajillion stray cats in Morocco. Like, well, I don't know if it's the whole country, but in the northern towns in Chefchaouen, there's just, like, so many random cats, like, yeah, like, stray cats, and so many. And so anyways, all these cats, and there were chickens. There were like wild chickens, like running out of doors, and little kids and parents, they were walking out of the stores and turning out the lanterns. So it was getting more dark, and it started getting really loud. And around every 5 minutes, I would stop and I would ask the guy I'm sorry. I would ask the guy, like, are you sure you're a police officer? Like, you're really a police officer? And he would say, yes, like, I'm a police officer. And then he would say that in Spanish, and I could understand Spanish. And then he would pick up his walkie-talkie and start yelling in Arabic on his walkie-talkie. And I'm like, man. And so the next 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, I would stop. I would not be walking because we're walking. And I'm like, you're really a police officer? And he's like, yes, like, I'm really a police officer. And he would say in Spanish. And then again, he would like, start yelling in Arabic in his walkie-talkie. And then another guy would respond to him yelling in Arabic. And I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. And I was getting scared, And then at that moment, when it got really loud, it was starting to get really loud. There were like 5 different Arabic men, like men that spoke Arabic, or like Arabic men, and they like surrounded us. Like there were like all of a sudden 5 different men like walking with us immediately, like very quickly. So I was like, this is not good. Like, I was like, okay, I was just in my head mentally preparing, like, okay, I am going into sex slavery. Like, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like in the movies. I'm just preparing in my mind, like, you will go through this and you will get out of it. Like, I knew I would get out of it, and that I would inspire lots of women and do talks and like, talk about it and help prevent it, and awareness, and help lots of women, get through this and prevent this. I was just like, I'm going to have to go through this for a while, but I will get out of it and I will be just fine, and the Lord will protect me. I'm just mentally preparing my heart for this, which is crazy, but whatever. And so I still kept stopping every couple minutes, and I would ask him, and then all the men would stop, and I would talk to the so-called police officer, and then we would keep walking. So after like a while of doing this, and I'm scared, I'm like in my head, I'm so scared, and I see these 2 younger girls. They were probably like 8 years old or something. And one of them was on her phone, like talking on her cell phone. And I was like, I ran ahead of the group of men that were like escorting me essentially. And I ran ahead and I saw these 2 little girls, and I was like, is that? And I like crouched down and I pointed, and I crouched down at the little girls, and I was like, is that man a police officer? And I pointed at the guy in the jean jacket and the jean pants. And she looked at me funny, and then she looked at the guy, and then she looked back at me, and she was like, yeah. And I was like, and I just stood there, like basically with my mouth like hanging open. And I was like, oh. And in that moment, I like felt peace. For some reason, I just felt like so much peace. And so I went back with all the men, and then we walked for another like 10 minutes, like, and soon after, so it was like very more of a rural area of like shops and different things, but like within 10 minutes of walking and turning and like going through this maze, I started to hear like more people and more like cars, and then it started to get lighter and brighter with more lights, basically, like, and I was getting, and it gradually got to the point where we were like in the street where there were cars, and there were like street lights actually on the sides, and then there was like a market with food and lots more people. And man, I shouldn't make these podcasts at night because now I'm yawning all the time. I'm gonna have to do this in the morning when I'm not yawning. So anyways, and then all of a sudden there was like so many people around, and we started walking, and we walked right to the bus, the same bus that we drove in, and I was like so relieved. I was like overwhelmed with relief. Like I don't know why I didn't start crying. I think I was crying on the inside, and I ran on the bus. I didn't even wait because our leader was like outside the bus, and I ran on the bus, and I just like found my friends that they were sitting down already, and they were like, "Oh, where were you? Like, we were looking for you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like they just noticed now that I wasn't there. And I was like, so much for the buddy system, right? And so then I go back down off the bus. I was kind of annoyed that they didn't even know that I was gone. But then I went down and I was standing by the police officer and our leader of the group, and he was like, "You thought you didn't believe he was a police officer?" And he was laughing, and the police officer was laughing, and they were all laughing at me, but I was like, and then he had no badge. There was no, like, literally there was no indication that he was a police officer at all. You know, I think he showed a badge later, but he didn't show his badge earlier when he should have. Anyways, they thought it was so hilarious, and the reason that he was talking back in Arabic was because he was communicating with other police officers, and they were holding the bus for me so that they didn't drive away. But yeah, that was a super crazy experience for me. I'd never experienced that. I really did think I was going into sex slavery at that point. But praise the Lord, that did not happen. And it was an actually really good police officer. And it was a police officer in general. That could have been really bad. The Lord was looking out, like he sent angels. Like that guy could have been just an angel. You know what I mean? He could have been an angel. And I didn't even know it. It's because he literally came out of nowhere. Like there was no one behind me or around me. And I went around the corner and then he was just there. And then the other guy that had all the stuff on him, he came out of nowhere too. Because I was like by myself. Like, you know, there wasn't that many people around where we were when I first lost my group. So, yeah, that is just one of the many stories of when I studied abroad in Spain. Although that whole thing happened in Africa. But, yeah, my mom was so worried for me going to Africa and going to Spain. And I didn't tell her that right away. I did call my dad and tell him, you know, once I got back to Spain. But I didn't tell my mom that story until after I got back from studying abroad and living abroad and traveling all over. So, because she thought something like that could happen, and so she was worried. But, you know, the Lord protects. And yeah. So I hope y'all enjoyed that story. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and share this story with a friend if you feel so inclined, and subscribe and follow for next week's episode. Love you.